Okay, we're moving right along. We're up to First Kings. Like I said, this is generally not a part of most Christian spirituality on a daily or regular basis. These readings do show up. They are in the lectionary cycle, not completely, but basically. You all know that this is just an aside, that lectionary cycle that we all use basically came out of Vatican II. That's the first time we see that particular cycle. In the years A, B, and C, if you took the Sunday services there, those readings, you would essentially read the entire book of sacred scripture, Old and New Testament, in those 3 years' time of the Sunday services. That's not including if you go to a daily lectionary cycle or have daily mass or whatever. That's challenging. Where do you get the readings for daily mass? You have to work on that a little bit. There are places to get it, but we don't need to get into that here. But the thing is that the scripture, when we think of the mass, a lot of times people think that's not biblical. That's crazy. The Bible is highly involved. The fact that you cover the entire book of sacred scripture in a 3-year period of time on the Sunday service is amazing. This keeps you from just eating the things you like. So sometimes we have to eat our First Kings. First Kings is like eating Brussels sprouts. Some people, they don't like them, broccoli. But it's part of the menu. It's part of a healthy diet. You got to have a little dab of it now and then. So I encourage you just to read these books. And so we'll start into First Kings here. It's already been said at the outset of our journey that the sacred page, that is one way to speak of Holy Scripture, it's the redemptive history of the people of God. This particular work is in many ways the political history of the ending of the reign of the King of David. That's where we're getting to. The enthronement of Solomon, his son, and the things he's going to do. And then we get the divisions between the northern and the southern tribes. The northern 10 tribes disappear. They go away from human existence. When they're getting taken out into the Persian Empire, out into the greater Middle East, and they're just placed in they assimilate. The people don't actually disappear, but they don't have an identity together anymore. This is done with lots of people. We've tried it. Well, with the American Indians, we worked on this to a degree. You try to make them Americans, move them around, do things with them, and they lose their identity as a people. They lose their memory of who they are. And so that's what's happening there. There's many instances in the book of Kings where the moral of the story becomes talking about religious failings can lead to loss of identity. And that's what it is. The people of God oftentimes losing their identity. All of God's people, or at least many of the important ones, will end up captives in Babylon, and the brief time of them having kings in a kingdom will not ever return. There will not ever be a kingdom in Israel again like this. So this will be a time that David, Solomon, this is brief. But as we said, if you think about the Middle East, I should have brought my maps with me, but it's a thoroughfare between Egypt and the Persian Empire going around the Mediterranean. It's a little area that people travel through. It's like living on a highway. So Israel's always being overrun by either forces from Egypt or forces from Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, that area. So, chapter 1 has a fairly decent retirement care set up for King David in his comfort. Abishag, the Shunammite, is quite lovely. David's cold all the time. He's probably got peripheral vascular disease, or as old people are just often cold. They give him a beautiful Shunammite virgin to snuggle with. He just snuggles with her. He's an old man. This is nice for David. So it kind of gives a sense of reality to it, that this little girl helps keep him warm. The reign of Solomon is contested right out of the gate. Abinadab is hanging on the horns of the altar once he hears Solomon's been made king. It's sort of a home base deal. You can hang on to the altar. You can't touch you there. If you're afraid Solomon's going to do something to him. We get a fairly nice orderly charge of Solomon by David. And David passes away. So right here in the beginning of 1 Kings, David is passing away. Not there anymore. Solomon deals very harshly with attempts to unsettle his throne. Joab is killed. Altar horns don't always save. And, well, we can see that, how many priests have been killed at the altar? Well, quite a few. And Jerusalem is the capital at this point. So now it's not Jebus, it's Jerusalem, and it's the focal point of the kingdom. Okay, you can see we're getting down the wrong track here by chapter 3. Solomon marries a daughter of Pharaoh. Now, to the people of Israel, why is this not going to work out? She's an Egyptian. You're starting to adulterate the bloodlines. You're not staying with your own people. So, but they're always tempted to go to other cultures because they got cool stuff. Remember the kingdom of the snake that we talked about earlier? The Pharaoh with the snake on his hat. Never a good sign. Chapter 2, David gave Solomon strict instructions of the Mosaic traditions to be upheld. Solomon asked for wisdom. We've all heard about the wisdom of Solomon. I don't ever really see this myself in the text, but apparently he was wise. So there. In his dream, anyway, he asked the Lord for wisdom, and it's given even plus more. And then, we get the tale of the baby in King Solomon's court, right? With the mother, that two people are claiming possession of the baby, motherhood of the baby. The true mother of the baby that loves the baby does not want the baby to be cut in half. Because Solomon says, I'll get a sword, I'll give you each a half. Well, if it's you love the child, you just let the child go, so. But that's to demonstrate how wise he is. We get lots of details intended to show the greatness of the kingdom of Solomon. It's big. How many horses, how many chariots, how big an army. This man is a scholar and a gentleman. There's nothing he doesn't know. He knows all the biology, all science to be known. He's the wisest man there is. He gives countless proverbs and all kinds of insights into everything. He's Solomon. Solomon speaks with Hiram, the king of Tyre, and plans for the temple are underway. And you have to know, if you've been to the Holy Land, you realize this. There's no trees. You got to get lumber from somewhere else. Where do you go? Cedars of Lebanon? That sounds like a good start. You got to go somewhere else. There's rocks, but there's no timber. The text claims Solomon has conscripted over 100,000 people for work on the temple. Wow. But you know what? Doesn't that kind of sounds like what happened to the people in Egypt, doesn't it? He's kind of lording it over the people and really making them work. So, 480 years after the people of God came out of Egypt, Solomon builds the temple in the 4th year of his reign. Okay? So where did we place Moses? 1400 BC. You can do the math. You can see about where we're at. So that's where it is. In 612, God speaks to the building of the temple. What does God want? We'll look at that in a minute. It took 7 years to build the temple, and it really must have been something to see. So let's look at that. I try not just to read long stretches of this, but there are certain parts that's worth reading. Concerning this house, oh, my phone's ringing. We'll kill that. Okay. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house that you are building. If you will walk in my statutes, obey my ordinances, and keep all my commandments by walking in them, I will establish my promise with you, which I made to your father David. I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built a house and finished it. And it goes on to all the particulars of the temple. But this is important too, that in a way, if you think of Jesus, is in the line of David, right? This covenant is maintained. It's a continuous relationship. It took all of 13 years for Solomon to build this place. Well, you have to think, though, 13 is kind of a questionable number. I don't know if 13 is not a perfect number. It's an odd number. And in the Jewish mind, odd numbers are always a little bit suspect. And 13 is one of those. The ark is bought by the priest, and the cloud of the presence of the Lord fills the temple. Solomon gives blessing and history of how we got here. Remember, you got to tell the people of God their whole history over and over and over again. And Jewish people still do this, still go through, start right at the beginning, go through the Exodus, who we are, how we got here, all the stuff we've been through, and our relationship with the Lord this whole time. We see a real comprehension between sin and consequences beginning to evolve. Solomon tells the people wisely and well how to be. A great feast was had, 7 days long, and 7 more days after that just to get it right. That's a big feast, 2 weeks. The Lord speaks to Solomon at Gibeon. His name, eyes, and heart will forever be with the temple. Name theology is huge to the people of God. The Lord states that the temple is well enough, but you know the rules. If you don't live by the Mosaic covenant and everything I've put forward, I not only came into this temple, I can leave it. That's the big thing. He wants the people to stay pure, to stay true to the Mosaic covenant and their covenant with God. They perpetually don't do this. Let's read chapter 9:6. See if this sounds like somebody we know. Sometimes these things are eerily familiar. If you turn aside from following me, you or your children, and do not keep my commandments and my statutes that I've set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut Israel off from the land that I have given them. And the house I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight. And Israel will become a proverb and a taunt among all peoples. This house will become a heap of ruins. Everyone passing it by will be astonished and hiss. They will say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this house? Now, you can have your own opinion on this. This really does happen to the people of God. You think of the time of Jeremiah, when the captivity is going on, and the places, there are pot shards everywhere, everything's busted, everybody's starving to death, sewage isn't being taken care of, it's a mess. All the important people are being carted off back to Babylon. It sounds an awful lot like that, doesn't it? So we'll see. But we see the vastness. By chapter 9, the authors here really want us to see how big Solomon's deal is. And everything is done. He even has a navy. So we've really moved up. We've gone from fighting in the hills and, we don't even have any wheeled vehicles. No, we're fighting with farm tools. No, we've got a navy. That's a different deal. Now we're moving on to Solomon's fame is so great, the Queen of Sheba has to come in and see it from down in Africa. She's amazed. He has gold and ivory, but he has apes and baboons running around. He has exotic animals. Solomon has 12,000 horses, 1,400 chariots. The point is he's got a lot of stuff. They're trying to give the impression this is a king with fangs. Got stuff. Solomon kind of has a bit of a problem with women. He's taken wives and concubines from people that are not of the people of God. And people that the people of God probably shouldn't be mixing up with. Well, then that leads to problems. What leads people astray? What men get led astray by beautiful women? It just happens all the time. But, so Solomon is messing up. And so Solomon dies, and Rehoboam, his son, succeeds him. By the end of Solomon's 40-year reign, again, 40 years, just a long time, the tribes of God are coming apart. So let's look at 11:39. It alludes to Christ. So let's see how that is. Okay. All right. 39. I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires. You shall be king over Israel. And if you listen to all that I command you, walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight by keeping my statutes and commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you, and will build you an enduring house, as I built for David. And I will give Israel to you. For this reason, I will punish the descendants of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and he fled to Egypt, to King Shishak of Egypt, and remained in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Well, so he has to flee his father and goes into Egypt. That's always a place where people, you really only have two ways to go. When you're in Israel, you can go to Egypt, or basically, I mean, that's the closest place to go to get anything, or you can go around towards Persia or towards Babylon, that area. To the south is just a great desert, really nothing there. By chapter 12:16, the king is talking a lot like the Pharaoh of old. And the people of God are bugging out to their tents and leaving. He's working them so hard and taking so much of their pay and time to build up Jerusalem, the people are getting sick of it. They feel like they're slaves, and they're just done. And by chapter 12:28, we see two golden calves. Whenever you see idols like that, two golden calves, that's not going to go well. Not going to go well. So prophets of the Lord tell Jeroboam, the people rebel, how he's doing wrong, and he will not do well. So we're getting ready to kind of transition, towards the prophets. In 14:15, the captivity is foretold. And the people are getting larger. So Israel and Judah continue to fight. So the tribes are divided, the north and the south. They're starting to really not get along. The people of God are in disarray. Nothing good happens. Eventually, due to the really high taxes for the building up of Jerusalem and so forth, the people just rebel. Now, we're going to meet in chapter 17, we meet Elijah, the prophet. 17:15, we get the miracle of the flour and the oil with the widow, where he shows up and the widow's there. She has a little scrap of flour and a little dab of oil. There's a famine in the land. And he says, make me a little cake or a little bit of bread. And she's like, I have just this little bit of stuff. My son and I are going to eat it and die. Things are that bad. And shows that he has the ability to continue, like Jesus with the bread and the loaves, by whatever means Christ does this, we don't know. Can feed many people. Well, it kind of looks like that, so it's in line with how we tell stories with the Bible. And 1721 is very unusual that when he raises this lad from the dead. It's in the text, but anyway. So we move away. Now we're getting to the story of Elijah. And he's making a mockery of the prophets of Baal. You probably remember this story. It's in the lectionary cycle somewhere, where they think their God is powerful, the Baals, B-A-A-L-S. But Elijah has faith in the Lord. And so they stack up all their wood and all their stuff, and he says, go ahead, call to your gods. Come down and start some fire on that, whatever. And then he says, he gets his pile over here. He says, now take mine and throw it full of water. Now put it underwater. And then he calls upon the Lord, and the Lord comes down and laps up the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, to show his God is a powerful God. So, and you have to remember, you can make the mistake. There's Elijah and Elisha. Okay, Elisha is the younger to Elijah. He's his pupil. He's a servant of Elijah. So by chapter 20, we seem to have a lot of senseless fighting involving Israel and Judah in surrounding tribes. When there's disunity in the people of God or disorder, nothing goes well. Remember this when we were talking about kosher dietary law? Disordered things, things that swarm, things that are dirty. You know, this is not something that sets well with the people of God. Jezebel, we see, she's a real piece of immorality. Elijah the Tishbite, ever the prophet, calls out the situation regarding Naboth's vineyard. Jezebel is essentially stealing. And, if Elijah were around today, who knows if he could even keep up with all the things that we see. But Micah predicts the end of King Ahab. So we see another prophet here towards the end of this book. We don't have any real experience with anything like Old Testament prophets. If you'll see, there were several times in the story and the narrative where Saul was given to prophecy. When we were, a couple books ago when we were looking through there, in 1st and 2nd Samuel. It's an incapacitating kind of state that these people get in. It's like an ecstatic state. You don't really know, but they'll say, and he prophesied. We don't really know what that is. No idea. Were they saying things intelligible that other people could understand that had meaning? Or were they wrapped up in some state of religious fervor? Hard to say. So we get to finish up. We're left with Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, and Ahaziah, king of Israel. And the division is going to set the field for the subjugation which is going to come. The whole moral of the story is going to be that sin will result in the demise in the people in general. And this seems to be the case. So if you look at the people are not keeping the Mosaic covenant, they're getting really wrapped up in foreign gods and foreign wives and foreign stuff, not staying where they need to be. The kingdom divides. We see the 8th century prophets are going to come, and they're going to talk all about the coming down of Israel. And then we get in towards the 6th century, and then we're going to have the great captivity, and Judah never really comes back much, or like it was. They will build a second temple. It will happen. So we'll get ready to go on to 2 Kings. It's just a continuation of the same book.